Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we are going back. We are visiting the NFL draft. I know that the draft's been over for a couple of days, but at this point, not much else is going on in the sports world. So I want to stick with the draft and draft content as long as possible. Today, I'm going to be talking about 11 players I feel like NFL teams reach for in the draft. So, guys, these were guys who are still very talented players, maybe could become qualified stars or even star players. Like in terms of the draft and their draft stock, teams reach for them. And what I mean by that is basically teams pick the guy either rounds or a certain number of draft picks early. So they expended more draft capital on the player than I assumed they would. And to demonstrate, I'll go with number 11. We'll go right now and we'll start talking about it. But it's Jordan Brooks, linebacker, Texas Tech. The Seattle Seahawks selected with the 27th overall pick. Now, Brooks is a guy who I had not really on my radar as a first-round pick. I didn't think he was going to be a first-round pick. I thought it would be Isaiah Simmons, Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen. I thought that'd be the only linebackers taken. But Seattle goes out, gets Jordan Brooks. This does fill a need eventually for Seattle because right now they have a hole from last year's starting lineup. At one of the linebacker positions, they had Cody Barton playing Michael Kendricks' spot when Kendricks got hurt late last season. Kendricks is a free agent now, so I assumed going into the season Barton was going to take that spot over. Although Barton's more fit for a middle linebacker role, so perhaps we see Brooks take over immediately as a starter. Oh, I think Seattle really likes Cody Barton, so I wouldn't be certain that Brooks will take over immediately. But this is also a guy who could possibly take over in a situation where KJ Wright's deal ends after this year, and he could move in and start at the spot for right next year. But my issue with this pick is it's a little high for Jordan Brooks, a guy who has issues with pass coverage, which is something Seattle's linebackers struggle with a little bit in general. I know Bobby Wagner didn't have a great pass coverage year last year. They tried to – well, let me put it this way. With the 4-3 defense that Seattle runs currently, the linebackers have to be able to deal with pass coverage. And right now they're struggling with that. Adding Jordan Brooks, a guy who struggled with that in the past, I think makes it even more of a difficult situation for Seattle's defense, especially when they don't have a qualified edge rusher. If you don't know, recently, Jarran Reed, the defensive tackle for the team, said he's taking back his previous number. I believe it was number 90, which is what Jadeveon Clowney wore when he was in Seattle. And Reed is now taking that number back. So that signals to me that there is no Jadeveon Clowney return imminent in Seattle. So for a team like the Seahawks who have needs on the edge, possibly needs in the secondary, and also on the offensive line to go out and take Jordan Brooks immediately with the 27th overall pick, when they've reached for players in the past like LJ Collier last year and also Rashad Penny the year before that, two guys who didn't really pan out yet, who haven't shown sparks even being starting caliber players. And now you go for Jordan Brooks and you take him a little bit early too. For me, that just signals an issue with Seattle's front office because they have not drafted first-round picks historically well under the Schneider era and Pete Carroll era. I know they have that great run with Earl Thomas and Russell Okung. I think that was 2010, maybe 2011, when they got those guys. That was a very good first round. But since then, it's been guys like James Carpenter and Jermaine Ifedi. I mentioned Collier. I mentioned Petty. Those are the guys they drafted in the first round. Even their top overall picks. I know Frank Clark worked out well, but also they had a guy like Malik McDowell who didn't work out either. So they've had issues with their top picks. So this is a team that Brooks should be a great player, but I don't really trust the organization right now with their first round picks. So taking a guy like Brooks, who is slightly controversial, sets off red flags for me that this might be a reach. Going to number 10, it's our first round pick. It's AJ Terrell. Now, for those of you who don't know, I go to Clemson. I love AJ Terrell. I love T. Higgins. I love Isaiah Simmons, Tanner Muse, Kevon Wallace, all the guys who went in this draft for Clemson. I love all those guys. But 16 is a little high for Terrell. He plays a little stiff. He's a tall physical guy for a cornerback at least. But he does play a little stiff at the NFL level. And I think speed is also going to be an issue for him. Covering the guys who are faster, like a Tyreek Hill or something like that, will probably be a little bit of a trouble. Will probably give him a little bit of trouble. But this is just maybe 10 picks too high for him. I think this is Atlanta reaching because they desperately needed a cornerback, so they went with Terrell because C.J. Henderson was already gone, and obviously so was Jeffrey Okudah. So they reached and got Terrell. I'm not saying Terrell's a bad corner by any means. I said I like him a lot. I like all the Clemson guys a lot. But 16th overall is just a little high. And realistically, the mid-20s, mid to late 20s is really where Terrell probably should have gone. But instead, they take him at 16 overall. And like I said, it's desperately filling a need for them because they don't have a qualified corner. They got rid of Desmond Trufant in free agency this year, so he's just in the offseason in general, so he's gone. The best corner right now is probably Isaiah Oliver, and Terrell probably is even already probably better than him at this point. So I would say, it's a good move for them in terms of filling a need, but it's a reach for Terrell in terms of just the talent levels, especially because when you consider he went at 16, and someone like CeeDee Lamb went at 17, who I think is the best receiver in the draft. Caleb Von Chason went at 20. I think probably has higher upside than AJ Terrell, even though he's more of a boomer bust prospect. Justin Jefferson at 22, Kenneth Murray 23, Cesar Ruiz 24, Patrick Queen 28. I mean, these are guys who are all arguably just as talented, or if not more talented than AJ Terrell. So that's where I get the issue from for that one. Moving on to number 9. Number 9, it is Michael. I probably should look at how to pronounce the name beforehand. Michael Ojemudia. There we go. From Iowa at 77th overall. Now, I don't dislike Denver going for corners. I do think they're fairly set, though, on cornerbacks, especially like at the starting level, because they have AJ Bouye, who they traded for, and he's still pretty good. I mean, he's not where he was 2 years ago, but he's still a good corner. You got Bryce Callahan, who missed a lot last year, but he's coming back now. Even at safety, you got guys like Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. Kareem Jackson has played corner in the past, so you've got a player like that who's very dynamic. Duke Dawson, who you've got from New England in the past. I like Duke Dawson a lot, even though I know he's probably not going to get a lot of playing time this coming year. But in my mind, you reach a little bit here for a corner in the third round, just because I think there's better players available on the board. I think there's better prospects. Like someone like they take Larry like Lloyd Christian-Berry the third from LSU at center. I think he's a better prospect, but they took him at 83rd instead of 73rd, instead of 77th. Neville Gallimore goes to 82. I think he's better. Julian Blackman, the safety from Utah, at 85. Zach Moss at 86. And Nafri Jennings, 87. So there are guys who I thought maybe were better quality players still available. Lucas Niang, I hope I didn't say that name. Lucas Niang, the tackle from TCU. There we go. That's better. Malik Harrison. So I think there was better guys available at this point. Terrell Burgess. I'm saying all the names wrong today for some reason. But there are other guys available in the third round I think were just for better prospects. And also, like, the cornerback position was very weird this year. I don't particularly love a lot of the corners past the first round. But there were still, I think, better players available, like Troy Pride Jr. was a guy I thought was going to go higher than when he did. Because he went in the fourth round. Even guys like the corner, like Kayvon, or in safety, like Kayvon Wallace went in the fourth round. I thought he might go a little bit higher. So there were some issues I had with just the cornerback rankings and where the corners went. Overall, not a terrible pick for Denver, but I do think they reached a little bit. I do think they could have gotten him maybe even in the fourth round, but instead they get him in 77th overall. Number 8, and this is where we start getting to a little bit more of the obvious ones. I think this is Keyshawn. Hopefully Vaughn probably is his last name. I can't, again, last names really aren't my thing. But Keyshawn Vaughn goes to Tampa Bay with the 76th overall pick, so one spot before our previous reach. Now my issue here is I know Vaughn's pretty good at pass protection, so that's probably why he goes as high as he does. But we're looking at a third round when there's other players available there. I think Zach Moss is still available at running back, so he's probably a more dynamic player who can play out of the backfield. He's also just a better running back in general, in my opinion. He's still available. You don't go with him. And there are other players that along the offensive line who are still available. We talk about a guy like Joe Jackson who went one spot before Keyshawn Vaughn. So you've got guys of that caliber player are still available, but you're not going with them. Instead, you're going for a running back who realistically isn't going to be a star, but might come in on certain downs, especially in pass coverage potentially. So we know Ronald Jones struggles in that area. But I just feel like there's better running backs available, really. And third round is kind of high for this guy. I really would have thought fourth, maybe fifth, but they take him in the third instead. I mean, if they want him, I guess you could go for him because they filled so many needs on offense and free agency and stuff like that, and they already had a lot of great players. But 76 overall for a guy who wasn't really that productive at Vanderbilt is kind of surprising to me. And now 7th overall, this hurts me again because I got another Clemson gap here, but it's Tanner Muse. Let me put it this way. Muse plays safety linebacker. He's kind of like a safety linebacker hybrid. I loved him at Clemson. I think he's going to do good in the NFL, better than people probably would expect for what he did in college. So I love this pick. I think he's going to be a great special teams player. I think he'll actually surprise people and get some real playing time on the defensive side of the ball. But at 100th overall, I mean, that's really high for Tanner Muse. I mean, that was not where I thought he was going to go at all. I fully expected him to be drafted, but I didn't think he was going to go in the third round. And perhaps what startles me the most is that he goes before Kayvon Wallace, who I thought was a much better pro prospect in terms of being able to actually go out and like potentially win defensive snaps immediately instead of having to start on special teams and work his way in. But Kayvon Wallace goes in the fourth round, Tanner Muse goes in the third round. And also, it's a little bit of reach I put in here because it's the Raiders, and the Raiders have a tendency to get distracted by big names and by combine numbers and by stuff like that. They like the flash, the flare. Now, Tanner Muse is not a guy who's put up like the flash and flare numbers at the combine or anything like that, but I think they get distracted a little bit with who they're going after. In this case, I think Tanner Muse is a guy who is extremely talented. Like I said, I think he'll have a successful career in the NFL. But at 100th overall in the third round, I mean, really, that's around where you're trying to find guys who are going to come in and still maybe potentially start immediately. I don't view Muse as that kind of guy right now at the NFL level. I think he's going to take a lot of adjusting to get to that point, maybe by year 3 or 4, where he could be a consistent starter. I think he'll be an immediate impact on special teams right away, but I don't think he'll be someone you see on the field on the defense side of the ball in the first year as a rookie really that much, especially with Jonathan Abrams coming back from an injury last year. I mean, let's just look at the Raiders safeties too. Let me pull that up real quick because I know they got a pretty good, some pretty good depth at safety. You got Demarius Randall, who they recently acquired, Jeff Heath, the guy who they recently brought in, Jonathan Abrams there. So you've got guys to play safety. And I bring Tanner Muse, who's fit for a safety spot, but can also, again, play linebacker. I think it's actually makes him more valuable. What makes him more valuable, obviously, because he can play linebacker so that he can be the hybrid player. He can also come down and cover some guys a little bit more. But, again, he's more limited physically than I think some of the other players who are available were. So he's more limited in terms of athleticism. A great special teams player for sure. That's like I guarantee he'll be fantastic on special teams in the NFL. But I just don't know. But it just seems a little high for a very good special teams player to go. Moving on, number 6, Jordan Love. This should be expected, really. Well, if you follow me at all, you should know that I was going to put this on here no matter what, pretty much. Packers trade up to get Jordan Love despite having Aaron Rodgers under contract for, I believe, 4 more years. And Rodgers has already said he wants to play all 4 years before evaluating his career. So you got Jordan Love. He's going to sit for at least 4 years. You had to trade up to get him. I don't think Jordan Love's a pro prospect. I really don't think he's going to be that great in the NFL. I think he's going to be a bust. I'll be honest. I don't like his footwork. I don't like his release. Well, no, his release is okay, but his timing is really bad. That's the issue. I think he stares down his receivers. He throws in double coverage. He makes bad decisions in general. Like I said, footwork's an issue. Pocket presence isn't that great. So there's a lot of issues I have with Jordan Love. And that all is compounded by the fact that you won't see the field for 4 years. And honestly, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts. Like, honestly, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts. Because that at least, even if there's issues, even if Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love both really become bust players, not work out in the NFL, at the very least, Jalen Hurts is an athlete. He gives you the ability to run with his legs and could potentially be put on certain plays and do different things for you, and you can get creative with him. Jordan Love does not bring that to you. So Jordan Love fails as a quarterback. He fails as an NFL player, basically. So to me, I think this is a big risk, and I think it's definitely a reach for Green Bay because I don't think Jordan Love – I mean, I've mocked him in the first round because everyone knew he was going to go in the first round just because it's the quarterback thing, but I don't view him as a first-round talent. And number 5, we're going back to Seattle just because I write for the Seattle Seahawks for NFL Spin Zone, so I'm exposed more to their decisions and their pick and stuff like that. So they get DJ Dallas with the 144th overall pick. Yeah, this is a scenario where I'm kind of surprised they would go running back. This is still a 4th round. This is the very bottom of the 4th round, granted, but it's still a 4th round. Yeah, a guy like Shaquille Quarterman comes off the board at 140 overall. That's a very good player. Antonio Gandy Golden comes off at 142. So there are still quality players going here. Tyler Biadasz. Hopefully that's right. From Wisconsin, comes off at 146 to Dallas. And that's a very good player who could potentially even compete for a starting center role within his first 3 years. So you've got guys who are going to make an impact in the first 3 years coming off the board. And you go and you get a guy like DJ Dallas, who was never a super productive back in Miami. Never rushed for 700 yards in a single season. Never had 10 touchdowns in a single year in terms of rushing touchdowns, that is. Not extremely productive out of the backfield either. Granted, Miami's been an up and down program a lot. I understand that, but still, he's never was a feature back. And now you're taking him in the 4th round while you still have Chris Carson's on your roster. I know he's recovering from injury, but they said he should recover and be healthy by the time the season starts. Rashad Penny will probably have to wait 8 weeks. He'll probably have to start on the PUP list and then come back midway through the season. But again, he should be back by the end of the year. You already have Adam Choice, who's a former Clemson guy, I believe, on your roster, and you have Travis Homer, who got some experience last year late in the season and in the postseason, playing alongside guys like Marshawn Lynch and Robert Turbin, who were former Seahawks, who the team brought back specifically for their need at running back. But you've got Homer, who's I think a 6th round pick last year. Yeah, honestly, I don't see a huge difference between Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. Maybe a little bit of a different playing style, but realistically, here I'm struggling to type for a second. But realistically, I don't think there's a huge upside to taking DJ Dallas and using a 4th round pick on him when you have Homer there. Homer was also went to Miami, was more productive. I actually shared the backfield with DJ Dallas for a little while, but I just it's a scenario where you've got running backs on your roster. You'll be fine. They're going to recover. You're going to have Chris Carson. You're looking for maybe a number 2 guy behind him for the start of the year. But honestly, if it's not going to be DJ Dallas. Though, he's a different playing style than Chris Carson, and maybe a little bit in Travis Homer. So maybe you get a little versatility there, but still, it's not a huge difference maker. And you can find a guy like that in free agency as well. Because we've seen players who are quality running backs who can do things like that, who can come in and play maybe 15 snaps, 14 snaps a game in free agency. It's not hard to find those guys. So for me, this is a little bit of reach to use that in the 4th, to get him in the 4th round. And then moving on to a guy you probably haven't heard of, but it's DJ. Oh man, last names again. DJ Wonnum. That's so wrong, probably, but the Minnesota Vikings, almost in Miami Dolphins. Minnesota Vikings come out and get him with the 117th overall pick in the draft. So this is also a 4th round selection. And get him right after Ben Bartch goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, after Harrison Bryant goes to the Cleveland Browns. So there's still good players available on the board at this point. But you get, last name again, Wonnum from South Carolina. And the issue I have with him is not a super productive player in college. His college stats say 6'5", 260. The draft probably lists him a little differently. His draft profiles, they take the official numbers of the combine, always differ a little bit in weight and height. But he's kind of like it's kind of a situation where he's between a linebacker and a defensive lineman. Yeah, it lists him as a linebacker for his senior year at South Carolina, but realistically, probably a defensive lineman in the NFL. You don't really want a 260 linebacker running around, especially a guy who's probably not a super athletic dude and wasn't super productive in school. But this guy was never a great pass rusher in college, never super productive. It just seems like a big reach for a team that needed edge rushers and needed guys who could rush the passer, but you go out and get the South Carolina product instead of potentially going for some better players. I do think there are better players available. I think Curtis Weaver actually went after this somewhere a couple of rounds later. I think he probably would have been better fit for them. And so I was surprised that he went this high. I was also surprised the Vikings were willing to take the chance on him. Even look at the first pick in the 5th round. Khalid Kareem from Notre Dame. I think that's probably a better pick. Even the guy after him, Alton Robinson from Syracuse, I think that's probably a better pick if you're looking for an edge rusher. So for me, this was a reach. I think this guy probably could have been a 5th round pick. I think there were guys who were better at the top of the 5th round and were still available, but instead, Minnesota pulls the trigger. And I don't really expect this guy to see a lot of reps. And even if he gets reps, I don't think he'll be very productive. So for me, this was a bit of a surprising pick. I thought they would get more of a well-rounded player who had more production than this guy in college, but we'll see how it works out at the next level. Number 3, going back to Seattle, once again, because I've said I know a lot about the Seahawks. I have to cover them. And because I know a lot about the Seahawks, I know a lot about their draft struggles and their draft picks. In this case, it's Darrell Taylor from Tennessee. Now, my issue with Darrell Taylor is not the player, but the draft capital expended on him. So this was a guy who have had, in the last 2 years of his college, 16.5 sacks, and on 21 tackles for loss. Right about 82 total tackles overall. So he had production, but I don't think he was the best available defensive lineman at this point. Because again, this is still going very early. This is a guy, I think Seattle actually even traded up to get him at 48th overall. So you go out and get him after Marlon Davidson went the draft pick beforehand. So maybe that pushed you to move up to get this guy. But at the same point, there are other guys available. AJ Epinesa is still on the board, and he's a bigger guy who might be more fit for what you're trying to do. If you're looking for an interior player, maybe like Raekwon Davis is a defensive tackle from Alabama who went at 56 overall. So there's a little bit of difference there. I feel like even New England taking Josh Uche from, I'd probably say that wrong, but the linebacker from Michigan at 60th overall, it's a guy like if New England Patriots are taking him, there's probably some upside there that maybe you should have looked at. So for Taylor, it was just a little high for me because again, like Curtis Weaver's still on the board. Julian Okwara is a big one from Notre Dame who goes in the third round, early third round. I think he's a huge guy who's still on the board. Even on like the interior defensive line, guys like Justin Abuke is still on the board as well. So Neville Gallimore is another one. So for you to expend the capital you did on this guy, you better get production out of him immediately. And that's something that the Seattle Seahawks haven't done with their defensive players in the past. Look at LJ Collier last year. Didn't make an immediate impact. Didn't make an impact at all pretty much his entire rookie year. I think he finished the year with just 3 tackles, and that was it. And even guys like Rasheem Green took a little while to get and actually make an impact. And that's not what Seattle needs. Seattle needs instant impact players. And right now I'm looking at Darrell Taylor. He's probably going to be buried under the depth chart. And he'll actually probably be equal to Alton Robinson. I think Alton Robinson, who they got later in the draft, was probably even a better pick. I think he's probably a better defensive player. So taking Darrell Taylor in the second round is just a head scratcher to me because now you got 2 questionable picks early on in the draft. And maybe this is a situation where Seattle's trying to outsmart everyone else by taking the guys they didn't like, taking guys that our teams have valued lower. But again, I just don't see it being an immediate impact to a team that's trying to make a Super Bowl run here. Well, I still got some core pieces together. Those core pieces being Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, etc. Dwayne Brown as well, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett. You can't keep this whole group together forever, especially guys like Dwayne Brown and Bobby Wagner age and potentially going to experience some drop-off here in the coming seasons. KJ Wright, his contract's up after this year ends. So, again, this is a team that needs to win now. And taking a guy who's probably a project defensive end and isn't going to be able to come out and start right away and make an immediate impact. And there were better players available. Like Julian Okwara is the guy who was I was huge on. I liked him. Alton Robinson was a great pickup, I think, by Seattle. That was a great value signing. I think that's amazing. But this is just too high for Taylor. And there's too many good players still available. There's too many other players who would fit needs in different spots for the team that Seattle overlooked just to take Darrell Taylor. So for me, it's a situation where the team just missed on getting better players because they got locked in that they're going to take Taylor or they really want Taylor. But I give me like Trevon Diggs is still available. If you're concerned about the running back spot, like if you're seriously worried about running back, about Chris Carson potentially getting injured again, or maybe his contract ending and you getting stuck with Rashad Penny as your top back, Cam Akers is still available. I think J.K. Dobbins is still available. Raekwon Davis, the defensive tackle, is still available. If you don't trust Jaron Reed for the long term. Van Jefferson at wide receiver, Denzel Mims. Or is it Cleveland at tackle if you're really wanting to fill that tackle spot? Christian Fulton at corner if you want to add some corner depth. So, I mean, Jeremy Chin if you want a versatile safety player, versatile safety linebacker hybrid. So you've got players available. And instead they trade up to get Darrell Taylor. To me, that's just disappointing and a little bit of a shortcoming there on their part. So number 2 reach in the draft, I have it being Austin Jackson taking out of USC with the 18th overall pick. Now, I think Miami screwed up the first round. I think Miami really, really messed up their first round. I like Tua Tagovailoa at 5. That's why I thought they were going to take it. I have no problem with that, honestly. I like Tua a lot. When he's healthy, granted, because I know there's a lot of health concerns. I do think the concerns about his health are legitimate. The concerns about him potentially being fragile, those are legitimate as well. But I think it's a reach to go out and get Austin Jackson at 18th overall because he's the 5th offensive tackle taken, and he's anywhere between the 5th to 8th best offensive tackle in this draft class. He's an incredibly raw prospect with flaws, including his footwork, use of hands, that kind of stuff. All the technical issues, there's problems there. And you use the 18th overall pick on this guy. You want him to protect Tua Tagovailoa, who just admitted has injury issues. but he's a flawed prospect who's going to take time to adjust and get into the NFL. And you're projecting him to start over Julian Davenport at left tackle, which understandably, you want someone better than Julian Davenport at left tackle. But Austin Jackson is not going to be that guy. So Austin Jackson has all the physical qualities to be a great offensive tackle, sure. But a lot of offensive line have those physical qualities, just never put the technique together. Look at someone like Jermaine Ifedi from Seattle who played right tackle. Never got the technique together. Bad footwork, bad hand uses, always jumped offsides or had holding penalties. Those are the same issues that I expect Austin Jackson to have, just because he's not a fully developed prospect in terms of the intangibles of the game and the position he's playing. So I expect Austin Jackson will have issues. And again, I really don't like what Miami did here. Austin Jackson, I know they wanted an offensive lineman, but you could have got one like that at the top of the second round and probably gotten a better value player. Instead, you reached for Austin Jackson just based on his pure raw build and stuff like that and his power as opposed to his actual skill level, which don't match. His power is here, his skill is down here right now. So that's not an even match. Take Jackson and you go and get Noah Igbenogany. There you go. I nailed one. I nailed the last name for once, but go out and get Noah Igbenogany towards the end of the first round. And yeah, you probably need a corner. If you're thinking about trading away Xavier Howard, because you have two of the highest paid corners in NFL history now. I think two of the top three, actually, with Byron Jones being the top one. Not Byron Jones, Darius Slay being the top paid corner in Philadelphia. But if you're looking to trade away Xavier Howard, then the Noah Igbenogany move makes sense. But right now, you've got two all-pro corners on your team, and you got Igbenogany who's going to be playing the nickel back or is going to be playing the slot. And you already have Bobby McCain, who's also a quality depth player on your team as well. So for me, this just isn't – taking Igbenogany is also a little bit of a stretch. Not a huge reach, in my opinion, but I think it was a reach for Austin Jackson because Austin Jackson is a guy who honestly could have gone in the middle of the second round because his talent does not match the 18th overall pick. And then number one, surprise, surprise, it's the Raiders again taking Damon Arnette from Ohio State. Now, I know Arnette was a guy who kind of slid under the radar. So when we're talking about the top corners in the draft, we really overlooked Arnette and Igbenogany. We really talked about A.J. Terrell, C.J. Henderson, Jeffrey Okudah. Christian Fulton got a lot of press, and he ended up falling, I think, towards the bottom of the second round. Trevon Diggs got a lot of looks, too. I had those guys higher ranked on my own board. I didn't have Damon Arnette ranked in the top five corners. I didn't think Damon Arnette was going to be a first-round pick. I thought he'd be a late second to mid-third round pick, just based on his production in school. I mean, look at him compared to his teammate in Jeff Okudah last year. Because they're both corners. They both played on Ohio State. Okudah was clearly the better player, and clearly the more talented player with the higher upside. And yet the Raiders take Arnette with the 19th overall pick. And that's just too high for me. It's too high for a guy who really didn't prove himself worthy of the first-round pick in college. Sure, there's some of the skills there, some of the physical abilities that you would like to see in a guy who could go in the first round eventually, or perform at a first-round level. But he didn't put that together in college. You're taking a guy based on projections. And because he's from a big program, let's be honest, if Damon Arnette was from a smaller school like a UCF or something like that, there's no way the Raiders take him here. Because the Raiders are a team that only draft guys from big-name colleges really with their high picks. I mean, let's be honest. It's Clemson, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State, it's LSU. That's all this team takes is guys from the schools. So this to me just looks like the Raiders taking a guy who has some upside, but overdrafting him because they get caught up on the name of the school he's gone to, and the guys he's played with, and the guys he's been coached by. I think they just get caught up by all of that. And they take him too high. I mean, I think that's Ruggs too high as well, I think. So, I mean, this is clearly the higher reach because I think Arnette got drafted almost a round and a half higher than it really should have been. As opposed to Ruggs, who's maybe taking like 5 or 6 picks too early. But Arnette, clearly in my mind, still a late second, early third round pick. And the Raiders take him 19th overall when you could have traded back and accumulated more assets maybe, or you could have done a bunch of different things. I mean, but let me read off who was still available at 19. K'Lavon Chaisson, Justin Jefferson, Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen, Jeff Gladney. All the running backs includes Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but you don't really need those because you already got your running back last year. Michael Pittman Jr., T. Higgins, Ross Blacklock, Kyle Duggar, Laviska Shenault, Cole Kmet, Grant Delpit, Antoine Winfield Jr., Marlon Davidson, Chase Claypool, Jalen Johnson, Trevon Diggs, Cam Akers, AJ Epinesa, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Urza Cleveland. I mean, these are all guys who are still available. Kristen Fulton, A.J. Dillon, Willie Gay Jr., Jeremy Chin. I mean, these are all guys who are still available, who arguably were better than Damon Arnett, or arguably had better tape than Arnett, and could contribute immediately as opposed to maybe wherever Arnett will contribute. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just a significant reach because he could turn out to be a good player, but judging by what the Raiders have done in the past and how they drafted first-round picks in the past, it's going to be a reach. It's going to be an issue. And it could be even worse because he's going to start immediately opposite Trayvon Mullen right now. I think it's going to be Arnett starting and then Mullen on the other side. Maybe we'll see LaMarcus Joyner thrown in there too. But Mullen, I think Mullen's a very good pick for them. I think Mullen's going to be very productive for them in the future. As a former second-round pick from last year from Clemson, I think he'll be great. But I think Arnett was just too much of a reach. Like Arnett, if you could get him in the second or third round, that's fine with me. Even if you get him in the early second round, all right, fine. But the 19th overall pick, that's just too high. So anyways, guys, those are 11 players who I thought were drafted too high in the 2020 NFL draft. I'm sure there are a lot of opinions, especially on me picking on Seattle a little bit. Probably the A.J. Terrell pick and also the Jordan Love pick might garner a little criticism, but I think, and the Austin Jackson one too, probably. I do think they were taken too high. Probably people would agree on some of the other picks. Some of you might not even know some of the guys were. I couldn't even pronounce all the last names for the guys, so maybe you can understand that, I don't know everything about these players, so I won't pretend that I know everything about them. But at the same point, I still feel like these are guys who, either based on who is still available on the board, the team needs their various suitors had, and also just the individual draft stock that I looked at before the combine. I feel like these guys were just taken a little bit too high. But anyways, if you have any comments or opinions about what I said or someone maybe who I left off the list, feel free to go leave those in the description or in the comment section below. I would also encourage you to go look at my last video if you don't like this solo content where I'm just kind of rambling and tripping over my own words a little bit. I suggest you go look at my last video where I've had three of my Eagles friends on who are fans of the Eagles. This is why I need other people on here, not just me. Because when I talk by myself, I ramble like this. But on my last video, I had three of my friends on. They're all Eagles fans. We talked about the Eagles draft. And honestly, we just had a conversation. It was actually probably the most fun I've had doing a video like this, and it probably flowed the best together. So I would encourage you to go check that out. It's fun. We've got some hot takes in there. And even if you're not an Eagles fan, I think you could relate to it and just have fun with it. So feel free to go check that out. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.